Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Trek Mission Log. My name is Jason Gilbert. I'm very glad that you're here with me today, and I want to say a huge thank you to all our new subscribers and all of those who faithfully watch. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you. Currently, we are sitting at 240 subscribers, and I've been announcing that we will be doing a giveaway when we reach 250. So we are only 10 away. So it could very well be next week that we make the announcement for the giveaway. So stay tuned. I'm getting very excited about that. I ask if you like this content and these reviews, would you do me the honor of subscribing? And when you do, would you please comment I subscribed, as I would love to personally thank you. Also, I'm on Instagram at Trek Mission Log, and you can check me out there. Now today we are revisiting a character that we met early in season 1. He is a fellow that you love to hate, and his name is Harcourt Fenton Mudd. And this is season 2, episode 8, titled I Mudd. It originally aired November the 3rd, 1967. Written by Stephen Kandel, directed by Mark Daniels, and it is produced by Gene L. Kuhn. So, check out this little piece of information regarding this episode, and when we come back, we will dive right in. McCoy and Spock passed Mr. Norman in the corridor, who greets them. He is a newcomer to the Enterprise. McCoy said to Spock that there is something not right about him, but he can't pinpoint it. Spock suggests that he is being hasty in his judgment. McCoy said that it is odd that a man never smiles and never engages in conversation unless it is while on duty. Spock raised an eyebrow and said that his argument is not logical. Shortly after, Mr. Norman walks into the auxiliary control room and knocks out the officer there with an incredible chop that would rival the Shatner chop. And he begins making adjustments to the controls and the computers, and he causes an overload. On the bridge, Sulu detects an unplanned course change. Kirk orders him to correct it, but Sulu cannot. Kirk orders security to auxiliary control, and when they get there, Norman is nowhere to be found, and the controls are jammed. The bridge crew is trying to control the ship, but none of the instruments are responding. Norman has knocked out another crew member in engineering, and while he is there, he fights off everybody in engineering single-handedly. He makes adjustments to the warp controls, and the ship starts speeding up. Kirk orders security to engineering, and as he is about to make his way there, Norman comes onto the bridge and stops him. He is unusually strong. He said he has connected the matter-antimatter pods to the main navigational banks and has taken control of the ship. Kirk asked who he was. He said, "We are no threat to humanity and we mean no harm, but they require the ship." We then see that Mr. Norman is an android. We then fade to the title sequence. Kirk and Spock marvel at the fact that Norman is an android. He reiterated that he is in control of the ship. When Kirk asked who sent him, Norman said he is not programmed to answer, and then immediately shut down. Kirk has no choice. The Enterprise has been taken over, and they are going wherever the android is sending them. After 4 days of traveling at high warp, they are now entering orbit around a planet that has never been charted. The android wakes up. He said that Kirk, Spock, McCoy, Uhura, and Chekhov need to beam down. And then he said, "Please." So they beam down. When they get down to the planet, they are greeted by two females, presumably androids as well. One said that he is waiting. They walk through a door, and here is where we see again Harry Mudd. He asked to be addressed as Mudd the First, ruler of this entire sovereign planet. Kirk demanded that control of his ship be returned, and as he was trying to communicate with the ship, one of the androids crushed the communicator. Mudd told them that they need to enjoy this planet because they will all be there for the rest of their lives. He then laughs hysterically. Kirk demands that his ship be returned to him. Mudd said that it is against the law that he's instituted. He then reveals several female androids who all look the same. Kirk asked how he got there, seeing that he was in custody and dropped off at jail. He got himself into an assortment of trouble, and he was facing death, so he broke out of jail. He stole a spaceship, and when he was being fired on, he drifted into unknown space, and he looked around and he said, and I found Mudd. Presumably that's what he named this planet. Spock asked why he brought them here. He said he found himself surrounded by 200,000 androids who service his every whim. He said it is paradise, but he had an awful look on his face. He said that they won't let him go. They want to study him. Mudd then said that he ran out of things to do because the androids need more human beings to serve and to study. His plan then is for Kirk to take over for him on this planet while he leaves on the starship and gets back to civilization. As the androids are escorting them to their quarters, McCoy notices a dark crevice and asks Mudd about it. He said it is a shrine for his wife Stella. He went on to say how she constantly nagged him and drove him crazy, drove him to outer space. This Stella is an android. She was created so that Mudd can gaze upon her and rejoice in her absence. When Mudd spoke with android Stella, she began reaming him out. He then told her to shut up, and she did. She shut up, and she shut down. Norman and the other androids accompanied them to their quarters. Kirk asked Norman who created him. He said the makers from the Andromeda galaxy. He explained that their planet's sun went nova, causing the surviving makers to scatter to outposts, and that they are all gone now. And when Kirk asked who they serve, in unison they said, "We serve Harry Mudd." They also proceeded to say that Mudd gave them purpose. Kirk asked them to leave, and when they asked why, he simply said, "Because we don't like you." And as they now discuss what they will do, Spock said that these androids cannot operate independently. There must be a centralized control system in operation. Kirk orders Spock to find it, and the others to find out whatever they can, and so they split up. Spock finds their central control complex, and as Spock was asking for questions, the light on his numbered lanyard went off, and that's what seems to be controlling him. In a different room, Kirk and Uhura are talking to Mudd and some of the female androids. Uhura asked how long they can survive. They said that they can house human brains and last for 500,000 years. Mudd looked at Uhura and said, "Immortality and eternal beauty." And then we see that Mr. Scott has also been beamed down. Mudd explains that he sent androids up to the ship and are forcing the crew to beam down, and in anger, Kirk attacks Mudd. Mudd said that his whole crew was down here now, and an android crew is aboard the ship learning how it operates. Kirk released him and said he would never get away with it. Starfleet would stop him. And as Mudd left, Spock said, "Captain, it's possible that he could get away with it." The androids are loyal to Mudd, They can provide anything a human could want in unlimited quantities. Kirk said that this is what concerns him about his crew. Just then, some of the female androids attend to Chekhov. Chekhov asked him if that evil Mud, he used some other names as well, programmed them, and they responded, "Yes, my lord." And then he said, "This place is even better than Leningrad." Maybe a little Cold War propaganda. Kirk tries to talk to his crew about how to get out of there, but they are rather enjoying themselves, and Kirk reprimands them and tells them to get refocused on getting out. One of the female androids comes in and asks, "Is there anything I can get to please you?" Kirk said, "Give us back our ship to please us because we desire it. We're not happy." The android looked confused and asked what unhappy means, and it was Spock who stepped forward and said, "Unhappiness is the state that humans feel when their wants and needs are unfulfilled." And when Kirk said, "We want the Enterprise," her lanyard started blinking. She then said, illogical, Norman coordinate. They don't understand unhappiness, and now they have to study it. Kirk comes in and talks to Mud, and Mud said that his bags are packed and the Enterprise will leave orbit in 24 hours. He turns on Android Stella one more time so she can ream him out so he can tell her to shut up. Mud asked the androids to have his bags transported up to the ship, and they all said no, in unison, that they could no longer take his orders. At this point, Mud is confused. The androids said that humans are flawed, that they will now take the starship and leave the humans on this planet. They will control the galaxy by taking care of all humanoid life. And he said that we will serve you, and you will be happy and controlled. Now they and Mud have no choice but to work together to stop the androids. Spock said in his dialogue with the androids, he is amazed at how there are many series of android, and he names a bunch of them, but there's only one Norman. They can surmise that all the androids must be connected to a single brain, Norman. Mud asked what he can do. Kirk said nothing, just go to sleep. And at that point, McCoy gives him a hypo, and Mud drifts off to sleep. Kirk then approaches an android and said that Mud needs medical attention and McCoy needs equipment from the ship. The lanyard blinked, and she said she's directed to serve the situation. She sees Mud unconscious, and McCoy said that he is dying. She asked if he would be repaired if he is taken to their sick bay, and Kirk said, "I guarantee it." At that point, Uhura spoke up and told the android that they were lying. Kirk asked why she told them. Uhura said that she wants an android body and wants to live forever. After the android left, Kirk applauded Uhura's performance. Kirk then said, "We are now going to take the Alices on a trip to Wonderland," referring to the Alice series of androids. So Kirk summons the androids and requested their attention. They come in, and when they do, the crew comes in and puts on a performance. When they asked what is happening, Kirk said they are celebrating. Chekhov thanks Uhura for the dance, and she returns his gratitude by slapping him. And all these actions have the androids looking confused. The androids have now somewhat shut down and are oblivious. Meanwhile, in a different room, Spock is conversing with some androids. He told the one that he hates her, and she's bothered by that, and both androids in the room shut down. Now they are going to try to immobilize Norman because he is the control center. Kirk goes in and he says to Norman, "We want you to surrender." Norman said that is not logical, as they can move quicker and are stronger. Mud talks to Norman about how humans need liberty. Then Scotty and McCoy begin talking like androids, and they said they love only their work, and then they curtsy. Norman is confused and asks Spock to explain. Spock said that logic is a little bird tweeting in a meadow. Logic is a wreath with beautiful flowers that smell bad. And at this point, Scotty begins wailing about how he can't go on. He's just too tired of happiness. He cries out for somebody to kill him. And at that moment, the crew and Mudd point their fingers at him like a phaser and begin whistling until Scotty drops. Kirk embraces him and said he's had too much happiness, but now he's happier that he's dead. After several more minutes of this nonsense, Kirk said to Spock it is time for the explosive. Spock reaches into his shirt and pulls out a handful of nothing, an imaginary explosive. He then pretends to toss it to Mudd, who then pretends to catch it, who then pretends to arm the bomb, and they all pretend to detonate the pretend explosive. And as all of this takes place, the female androids shut down. Norman is now very confused, and Mudd told him that he lied. And Kirk said to Norman, "Everything Harry tells you is a lie. Remember it." And as Harry keeps talking to him, Norman cannot make sense of any of it, and he eventually self-destructs. Mudd then says that he's beginning to respect Kirk and would like to start a partnership with him. Kirk said he had something else in mind. Kirk told Mudd that he had been paroled to the android population of this planet. He told Harry that he is an irritant and will stay here until he stops being an irritant. And Kirk also said that they programmed a special female android attendant to take care of his every need. And as Mudd is smiling, out comes Stella, who is reaming him out. And he's telling her to shut up, and this time it isn't working. And just then, a second Stella appears and starts reaming him out. And then a third one appears, wearing a lanyard that has the number 500 on it, indicating that they made 500 Stella androids. And with the crew safely back aboard the ship, the Enterprise sails away. What a beautiful shot of the Enterprise that is. That's the story of Mudd. Now, there was a lot involved in this episode, so I found it challenging to analyze, especially the last 10 minutes when the crew were divulged in a variety of different things, all to try to confuse the androids and to get them to shut down. Let me begin by saying that I did enjoy this episode. It certainly is not the greatest that Star Trek has to offer, but it's not the worst, and it's certainly much better than Mudd's Women from Season 1. The opening sequence was fantastic. And I also believe, and I stand to be corrected, it is the longest opening sequence of the series thus far. It lasted about 5 minutes and 30 seconds, but it was great. An android came aboard as a member of the crew, took over the ship. It redirected a ship to a planet that would take 4 days to get to, and there was nothing that Kirk could do, and the fight scene in engineering was superb. This then leads to the story itself, which I feel is a solid story. The Enterprise goes into orbit around an uncharted planet, and when they beam down, they find that it is inhabited by androids and one human, Harry Mudd. What was unfortunate is that the title of the episode gave away who the villain was before we see him. I think a different title would have been better here, simply because it would have been cool to have been surprised by Harry Mudd. And I ask you, just for fun, why don't you put some comments below? What title would you give to this episode? And if we get several, I will try to read some of them on my next video. Now, the premise of this story is very cool. A planet of androids controlled by one human. However, was that the case? I loved the concept of how the androids were all controlled by Norman, and then Norman took control of the situation and planned to maroon all the humans on this planet while they take over the galaxy. I really felt that this was solid science fiction. Also, the whole classic lineup was present, and it was great to see them all together again on screen. Every one of them, except for Sulu, I would say, have key parts. Sulu was definitely in the beginning of the episode, but we didn't see him after that. Another key factor in this story is that they ended up having to work with the man who brought them there and started this whole thing. And it was great to see the crew working through it with Harry Mudd. And their plan was a well thought out, clever plan to overload the androids with confusion. And it was a plan that succeeded. It was very comical to watch. They were dancing and bowing and pretending to die, etc. It was funny, but I want to submit that it took a long time, over 10 minutes on the screen, and it was over the top. After a while, I was wondering if the writer was on an LSD trip. Now, during the dance sequence, you can see where Scotty lost a finger, and he did in fact lose a finger during the war. The show did its best to hide that fact, but it did come out from time to time. This episode also lacked special effects, but I'm going to say that the story really didn't call for it. And I will say this, I absolutely hate that shirt that Kirk wears throughout the series on and off. The gold uniform shirt is much, much better. The ending of this episode was brilliant in that they made multiple androids of Mudd's wife Stella who would torment him for many, many years. There's more that can be said, but I'm going to give Mudd 3 out of 5 Starfleet insignias for awesomeness. It was an enjoyable episode with a solid story and some good laughs along the way. That wraps up this edition of Trek Mission Log, and I sincerely hope that you enjoyed this. Please leave some comments below about what you liked and what you disliked. I love reading all of them, even the ones that disagree with me and my thoughts on the episode. Please keep them coming. Next time we look at Season 2, Episode 9, titled Metamorphosis. And it is in this episode where we meet for the first time somebody who will become a huge part of Star Trek lore, whose name is Zefram Cochrane. I want to thank you for watching, and until next time, live long and prosper.